Okay. And we'll go ahead and get started. Welcome everyone to our March 12th LibsWork meeting. My name is Andrea Lewandowski. I'm with the New Jersey State Library. And we are really lucky today to have Maria and Henry from the Texas State Library and Archives Commission to talk about ChatGPT, specifically for workforce development and grant writing. So this is an excellent topic that I know we're excited to explore. Um, Given the size of the group, if you guys don't mind just introducing yourselves in the chat, and you can keep the chat going throughout the meeting, and then we can know who's here and what you're working on. Maria and Henry, do you like to receive questions through chat?
Sure. Either
Chat,
way.
unmute, whatever. We're open to all of it.
Okay, sounds good. So I will go ahead and turn it over to you. You both can introduce yourselves and get started. And if you need anything, oh, and let me know when you want me to launch the poll and I'll get that going.
Thank you. Thank you.
Well, hello, everybody. Welcome. This is I'm Henry Stokes, and
I'm
got
Maria Freed. Good afternoon, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here.
this is Generating the Future ChatGPT for Library Workforce Development and Grant Writing. And just a little bit about us. Next slide. I'm the Digital Opportunity Program Coordinator, and Maria is.
The Workforce Development Consultant at TSLAC.
Yeah, and we're so happy to have you. So right off the bat, though, let's go ahead and launch that poll, Andrea, just to see. This is kind of just helps us know where we're at. All right, so the question is, have you used or do you currently use ChatGPT and by ChatGPT, of course, we mean any really, if you prefer to use a different kind of one, but we mean generative AI, the text-based text prompting type technology for work, personal, etc. Yes or no?
Okay, we'll just give it a couple more seconds. All right, I'm going to go ahead and end the poll and share the results.
Oh, great. Looks like 73% of you started using it. That's awesome. And then 27% of you have not. All right, good to know. All right, so today we're going to talk about why ChatGPT, then get into as far as workforce development for libraries, etc. We'll kind of talk about its uses for the library staff themselves. Maria's going to then talk about really getting into how you could use it for your patrons, and then we'll open it up for discussion. So first off, why ChatGPT? And of course, by ChatGPT, that's the big one that launched back in November of last year, previous year. That's kind of, but of course we mean at this point, all the generative AI, that's those tools that are coming out and getting integrated so much into everything we're doing. Next slide. All right, so I like to show these slides because I think it's nice to stand back and take a look at what library's role here is. You know, from the get-go, we have been places where people have come to first get introduced to new technologies. So even if it was like the card catalog, that's like a system. It seems primitive to us now, but the idea it was actually pretty advanced for its time. The idea that you could see everything in one box, right? And things like microfilm, microfiche, right? These are all new things that allowed us at the time to access information and speed things up in terms of our research, discovery, and learning. Next slide, please. You know, and then we start getting into computers and other types of equipment. You know, sometimes this is the first place people ever saw a computer was at the library. So it's always been part of our role. Next slide. You know, even new technologies like touchscreen interfaces and 3D printers, and now VR, AR. And so my point here being AI is just one thing in the long line of continuous of us exploring these new technologies with our communities and helping them understand them, embrace them, and apply them to their own lives. Next slide. Okay. You know, this is just my inspirational slide that talks about libraries as lighthouses in this crazy universe we're going to find ourselves or are finding ourselves in as these amazing new technologies suddenly come into play and as part of our everyday lives. The library being a place where the training can happen to address that new AI divide that's going to occur. We can be technology showcases, right, to help them understand it, help the communities, like we've always done, generate and tell their own stories with it, empower specific populations that have been shut out of or been harmed by that technology, help those groups embrace it and own it for themselves. Libraries are, this is of course a key role for us to play. Next slide. So speaking of generative AI being one of this new technology, we can see that, there's going to be this is one of the major new technologies that's going to be happening. And as this Future of Jobs report that came out recently, the survey of it indicated that 86% of the folks responding saying, we will see this being one of the biggest trends to drive business transformation in the next 5 years, including broadening digital access, which is a big thing libraries are doing as well. We'll see 44% of worker skills being disrupted. Next slide, please. So, we can see that another quote from this report, this idea being, we can generate the future with this technology, and that means the future workforce, the future funding for the library, the future, lots of things being built through this. This is a kind of a future building tool. And individuals can transform their careers with it, and we can figure out a way to have a future where humans and machines collaborate well. So that's the hope. Next slide. Here's just real quick some of the basic things, of course, that most of us already know about some of the benefits of it being, number one, being a cognitive aid, right? It's been described as a universal basic intern. If you haven't heard that phrase, it's fun. This idea of like everybody gets a partner in crime that can help them with everything they want to do. And that includes coming up with things, right? But also trying to be creative. It addresses the blank page problem, helps you get over that hurdle maybe, just by generating lots of stuff in front of you that you can then work through, and saves you from having to do all that initial design phase. Communications, lots of ways it can help with that. Making predictions, and finally productivity, which is kind of crucial for today's conversation. Here's an MIT study that was done in the summer that sort of pointed out that it really does increase productivity. So it's not just our assuming that, there's been some studies that show this. Next slide. So let's talk about libraries again. Next slide. So this really, we see this as a way, ChatGPT and other generative AI tools, as a way to help libraries do more with less, which we've always been told to do, unfortunately. With less money, less time, still you have to make a lot happen. This tool could really help us do that. We've long had a history of doing more with less, with finding ways to do that, including things like creating self-checkout stations, automating our catalogs so that they're all, instead of having it be through the card catalog, using volunteers, lots of different things that we do to help us free up our staff time to do the more important tasks, especially ones where we want to get to where that can't be replaced by AI, like the human interactions, the human focused things that we do, like relationship building, trust building. Okay, next slide. So here's a big list of all the things, many of these things you might know about, but maybe there's some new things too. But this tool could be helpful in creating documentations, procedures, technology plans, right? It outlines these things for you, creates drafts so you can take a look at them and see what you want to change. Social media posts, newsletters, letters of support, a slide deck for presentations, and getting into like, what should we ask for an interview? You can generate that for you. Things like when you're working with employees, helping you think about how to communicate best with them, for feedback, for evaluations, for just library focus, like summarizing book reviews. In project management, there's a lot of stuff that's being developed right now where it will be integrated into our existing software that does this, but things like it can help automatically generate a project timeline for you based on what you give it. It can help you with your scheduling, calendar appointments. I saw this, if you're thinking, these are just, again, I'm just throwing dots of different things at you, but, budget distribution ideas, like having to figure out, okay, well, if I'm this in this position, what's an idea of how I could allocate my funding? This one was cool to think about. What about onboarding new employees? Something that's a very time intensive task a lot of times. What if we could speed that up and kind of help create orientation FAQs? Or what if there was even like its own in the future, a chatbot that was just for new employees for an organization that can just work with them one-on-one to help them navigate those really basic questions to help them get introduced to the place and that kind of thing. Lots happening with meeting transcription, some tools out there already that, including Zoom, that will automatically not only transcribe what you've said during the meeting, but also help you summarize it, create minutes, already auto-generate emails for you ready to go so that you can send those out if need be, figure out what the action items are. So it's actually taking over the role of that sort of secretary person automatically. And then lastly, some new ways of exploring troubleshooting technology issues. So, you know, it does know tech stuff somewhat. And so you can like use your phone to scan an error message and it can sort of interpret that and learn what that is. And it's better than having to just like Google it and see what someone wrote on some random forum. It might actually help you solve the answers, get to the answers and solutions faster. Next slide. So before we dive into more about workforce development, I did want to talk about grants writing and talk about, before I get to grants writing, I did want to mention, if you could go back one, sorry, Maria. All of these things here are great for library staff, but it's important to remember they're also great for our patrons too, for them with those who have small businesses. All these ideas, even though I'm talking about library staff, I meant to also say, these are things that everybody may be using in their jobs, right? Or using as entrepreneurs or small business owners. So these are all the things for everybody. Okay, now let's talk about grants. Sorry. Grant writing. So grant writing is, you know, really challenging to do, as we all know, takes a lot of time, takes up, speaking of time and money, this is a huge investment for someone to try to pursue it, even though it's meant to give you funding and time. You know, requires expensive grant writers sometimes. And a lot of it, though, this is the interesting part for me, is that it's a cognitive thing too. It's like hard to write them, right? How do you best approach communicating as a grantee what, you know, convince the grantors what you need and what you're actually going to do with the funding. This is not an easy brain thing to do, in my opinion. It seems like the whole thing requires so much extra super powered brain cells to get there, and it's just not accessible as a result. Next slide, please. So with generative AI, yeah, someone writes, it seems like cheating. Huge, yeah. Is it cheating though? That is a good question for discussion. So with AI, you have a brainstorming partner. You just have it's like you hired somebody for free who came along and just knew about grants and knew about ideas of things and just brainstormed with you about what you should write for your grant. And it's not like in the past, you would have to, I guess you could call that cheating, going online and researching what other people are doing and what they're saying. Those are specific, you have to look out with your searches and find like a handful of authors that might have been writing about that. With generative AI, it's pulling from, you know, the whole internet from 2 years ago or whatever, but still that was so many people's ideas all meshed into one like magic. And it helps you then also put those ideas in order. It structures them for you so you can start thinking about them. There may be a way you can upload documents that help it sort of control what it thinks and is talking about too. So you kind of help it narrow its conversation points. So next slide. You know, what will this mean if grant writing tools are there to help you get that funding? You know, I think more accessibility, no longer need to sort of start from a blank page and somehow compose a whole symphony with very little to go by, like a single note. And it levels the playing field. I think it will allow more folks, I think about from where we're at the Texas State Library, with all our 80% of our libraries are small rural ones. And, you know, they're not taking advantage of the funding that's out there to help themselves. through our grants or through other folks' grants. And so what if they could use this tool to help them get up there to where they're actually crafting these grant applications that they don't have the capacity to create? Then suddenly they'd get the funding. It's like it unlocks the door. Next slide. You know, it does it is a little weird to think about. There's an article here from Nature last October that talks about just the idea of grant application systems. Is that, it says artificial intelligence could do much of the work, makes a mockery of the process. Thought that was interesting. So it's just something to think about. What does this do for this whole industry? And then secondly, of course, most importantly, as we all know, ChatGPT is like a golden retriever. It just wants to please us. It just brings back whatever it thinks you want. And it's only as good as the inputs. So the garbage in, garbage out, and it could easily, completely make terrible grant applications for you if it doesn't know what it's doing. And so you do have to kind of know what you're doing when you're doing this kind of work. All right, so that's what we wanted to say about grant writing, but I'm definitely interested in all your thoughts and that kind of thing. But I haven't seen a whole lot about it, except for here and there some libraries have said, oh, I'm using it for that. So if you've been using it for that, please share and let us know what you think. Next slide, please. All right, so pass it over to Maria.
Thank you so much, Henry. So as Henry has mentioned already, there are so many ways that libraries and patrons can use ChatGPT. So if a patron is just entering the workforce, switching careers, entrepreneurs or small business owners, these are just this just scratches the surface barely of what they could do with this tool. But before we get into some examples, I'd like us to think about this quote from Ginny Rometty. Sorry, I'm trying to remove something from my screen. Ginny Rometty, the former CEO of IBM. And she said, some people call this artificial intelligence, but the reality is this technology will enhance us. So instead of artificial intelligence, I think will augment our intelligence. So how much do you agree or disagree with Ginny? And also, in what ways does reframing the concept of AI as augmenting our intelligence, how does that challenge traditional ideas of technology's role in society with job displacement and human machine collaboration? And to me, Ginny's statement reminds me of at least two types of users. One that wants to do more faster, and others who may want to do less but still get the job done. And this tool embraces working smarter, not harder. So I do think that AI and ChatGPT does enhance what we already do. So here is a chart from the Zoom Work Transformation Summit in January, and it shows how long it took for 100 million users to use this type of technology or these tools. And so it took 16 years for mobile phones, 7 for internet, and just 3 months for 100 million people to use ChatGPT. And so just comparing this with Ginny's statement, this does seem to show that people do believe that ChatGPT or AI does bring value to their lives. It does enhance their lives in some way. And the rapid adoption of ChatGPT, it makes me wonder what other quick changes may arise in our society thanks to the use of this now. So just a few out of many reasons patrons may want to start giving ChatGPT a try are for time efficiency and quality improvement. Just by exploring ChatGPT, it could help them uncover better ways to do tasks for their business, which could lead to improved customer satisfaction. They can uncover better ways to do tasks for their job or their career search, which could lead to an increased number of employers reaching out to them for interviews. And like Henry said, this isn't a complete replacement. Prompts do need to be refined to get the best results, but it is still worth it, especially since this tool can complete time-consuming and repetitive tasks in seconds compared to what it may take a person to complete. And with that precious freed up time, they can dedicate it to business networking or practicing for an interview or implementing plans to increase sales. And another wonderful opportunity that ChatGPT brings is sharpening adaptability skills. So I'd like to share a quote from Charles Darwin. He said, "It's not the strongest of the species that survives, not the most intelligent that survives. It's the one that is most adaptable to change." So getting creative with ChatGPT, embracing shifts in how we work, it's not just about being flexible with changes in tech advancements, but also about building workforce readiness. And ChatGPT is perfect to explore how it can be used to one's advantage. So for business owners, how it can help them improve a service they provide, and let it handle those tedious tasks so that the users can focus on more critical aspects of their work or their business. And if patrons are curious about giving ChatGPT a try, they can just start by asking themselves this question: what is relevant to me in my world right now? And what prompts can I enter that will give me the best results for my needs? And that question, what prompts can I enter that will give me the best results? That skill of effectively crafting text that describes a task that AI should perform, it's highly valuable and one that prompt engineers do. And if I'm correct, the starting salary for a prompt engineer is $200,000 a year. So here's another quote I'd like to share from Paul Doherty, the Chief Technology and Innovation Officer of Accenture. And he said, "The playing field is poised to become a lot more competitive. And businesses that don't deploy AI and data to help them innovate in everything they do will be at a disadvantage." So here are a few questions to consider. Um, so how much do you agree with this statement and the idea of businesses and job seekers future-proofing themselves with AI? And what other considerations do we need to keep in mind regarding AI and the workforce? To me, our society values AI, tech, and digital proficiency. So the willingness to continue learning and expanding our capabilities and equipping patrons with the necessary information and skills, at the very least, this can't be ignored, this tool in AI. So now we're going to look at an example of how to create a cover letter. And while I play these videos, please feel free to share your reactions in the chat.
And the key to standing out to get a job is the cover letter. Here's how you use ChatGPT to automate the process of writing a customized cover letter for the jobs which you want to get. So I've already selected a sample job. Obviously, this is not a job I'm going for, but this is just a sample job. And I've highlighted the text from the job description. I've also highlighted the experience I've had. So what we're going to do is we're going to come here and we're going to say, write a cover letter to apply for this role. Copy this, paste it in here, press enter. And so now we're starting to see how people can really stand out. Now, the one thing I look at as part of every applicant that comes through is their cover letter. Have they spent time to customize something for us, the people that are actually hiring? And some jobs get 500 applications. So the cover letter is key. So now it has now started to write all the things. Now we want to say, we're going to copy our experience, and this could be copied from a CV as well, and say, update the cover letter to include the following experience. And so now it's starting to integrate the experience I have as part of the application form, as part of the cover letter. This is such a great way to stand out. Now, obviously, this is the first kind of attempt. And so the real key with this tool, with ChatGPT, is to refine it, right? And so we can say, for example, now like this one, rewrite it more conversational and a bit cheeky, right? Because now you want to have a bit of personality. And I can tell you that personality stands out from across all the cover letters. So if you can do a cover letter, that's a win. If you can do a cover letter that stands out, that's a bit more cheeky, right? That will actually help you to get the interview. Look at what this tool can come up with, right? This is a customized cover letter, which anyone can do for the job that they want. But it does take a bit of time to select the jobs that you want to apply for and to really spend some time crafting it. And one more point, that could be like a bit long. We want to say, write it again, but use shorter paragraphs. And again, because sometimes you want it to be super tight and super kind of easy to scan. And we want it to not be big chunks of text all together. And so look at the thing that it's coming up with. This is pretty amazing stuff. This is highly recommended for anyone who's looking to stand out as part of their job hunting process. And the key to standing out to get
My
a job
apologies.
is the cover letter.
So I hope you can still.
And the
Okay. So with this video, it's 10 minutes long. I won't play it here, but I highly recommend it if you have time later to watch this video on landing a job using ChatGPT. It goes beyond writing a winning cover letter and resume. It's jam-packed with information. And if you're like me, you're going to have to watch it several times to be able to pick up and grasp all of the advanced tips that he provides. So please check that out if you have time. Now we're going to check out a video for videos, for businesses, excuse me. And Ryan Reynolds used ChatGPT for an ad he created.
Hey, it's Ryan Reynolds, owner of Mint Mobile. We're always looking for ways to save you money. So this year, we're kicking things off with an ad that I created using ChatGPT, the AI technology. This is what I asked it to write. I said, write a commercial for Mint Mobile in the voice of Ryan Reynolds. Use a joke, a curse word, and let people know that Mint's holiday promo is still going, even after the big wireless companies have ended theirs. This is what it wrote. Hey, it's Ryan Reynolds here. Eerie. First of all, let me just say Mint Mobile is the shit. But here's the thing. All the big wireless companies out there are ending their holiday promos, but not Mint Mobile. We're keeping the party going because we're just that damn good. Give Mint Mobile a try. And hey, as an added bonus, if you sign up now, you'll get to hear my voice every time you call customer service. Just kidding, that's not really a thing. And stay classy, everyone. That is mildly terrifying, but compelling.
So do you think that ChatGPT generated ad mimicked or replicated human creativity and human speech convincingly? So
Hey, it's Ryan.
Now I'd like to look at a social media plan example. And so what I did was on OpenAI.com, I asked it to create 30 social media posts and image suggestions for the Texas State Library and Archives Commission and display it as a table. And in less than 30 seconds, it gave me all these ideas. And now I have a month's worth of material to use. And I didn't have to rack my brain on what to say, what the perfect image would be like, what hashtags to use. And what I could do also on OpenAI, they have a tool called DALL-E, DALLE. And I can just copy one of these image suggestions in the right column, plug that into DALL-E, add any other instructions for it. Like, do I want the image to look futuristic, cartoonish, like a famous painting, or realistic? And it will give me, that I don't have to spend so much time searching for the perfect photo, building the perfect photo. It'll give me very, very useful images quickly and save me so much time, most importantly. And now we're going to look at moving forward. Okay, now we're going to look at an example on creating a business plan. Now, again, these are just a couple out of many ways that patrons can use ChatGPT or AI for their job search or their business. So here, I created a business and I entered basic information like the business name, the target audience, the product range, and I didn't add enough information. So what it did was it did create a business plan for me, but there were certain sections that it fills in with tips for me to gather more information so that I could create a better business plan. So for example, financial projections. I don't know how to do that. I don't know how to, where do I start to gather that information? So I asked it to teach me how to create financial projections for my business plan. And it did that. Now, the directions that it gave me were more advanced. It spoke to me like it was an MBA professor. And so I then asked it to explain it to me in simpler terms. And it also did that. So what it provided me was with clear, organized guidance on the steps that I need to take to make my business plan or fill in the gaps that I had in my business plan. So now there are many libraries that are offering ChatGPT and AI classes to their patrons, and some of them even offer classes in other languages, in multiple languages. But I'd like to highlight these 3 libraries that have excellent ChatGPT programs. And Brooklyn Public Library, I'm mentioning them first because it was them who got Henry and I started on our journey of finding out what libraries in Texas are doing with AI and ChatGPT. So if you'd like to offer a ChatGPT class on how to create effective resumes and cover letters, I highly recommend reaching out to Brooklyn Public Library. They have an excellent blueprint that you could use to launch your ChatGPT class as soon as possible. And Austin Public Library, they collaborated with Score Austin, which provides free training to small businesses. And their workshops focused on marketing and specifically crafting queries to generate useful ChatGPT responses. So for attendees who don't have enough employees, but they need a social media person, after this class, they were able to create social media copy with ChatGPT. And I saved Pottsboro Library in Northeast Texas for last because not only did they recently offer a webinar to libraries on how they can use AI to make their lives easier and their operations and services easier. They offer several AI programs to their patrons. They work with local nonprofits to teach the clients of those partner organizations how to use AI to write cover letters and resumes and improve professional communication. And they train the staff of those nonprofits so that those organizations could teach their future clients. So the leadership of these libraries is outstanding. But enough of me talking. We'd love to hear your thoughts, your experience. Um, what hasn't been mentioned that needs to be said? And we know at the beginning of the presentation, many of you mentioned that you already use ChatGPT. So we would love to learn from you and hear your thoughts and recommendations and suggestions.
We did get some comments in the chat, Maria, we could go back to and kind of help address those if you want.
Okay, I'm catching up.
Yeah. So some of the comments so far that have come in, let's see here, was, yeah, does someone else have a comment they want to just throw out there though before?
Lisa, your question, do you need to have the paid level to do that? So with Dolly, yeah, so you can do a lot on openai.com with the free version, but if you do pay, I think it's like $20 a month, that opens you up to even more benefits or tools. But even if you don't get the paid version, there's still so much that you can do with the free version. But yes, to get access to Dolly, and is that right, Henry? That Dolly, you have
That's
it's part of
paid
the
one,
paid
yeah.
version. Yes.
I see Marilyn has her hand up. Did you want to ask something?
Yeah. I had this thought that I kind of keep on coming back to because like even in public schools in the area, they've banned the use of ChatGPT in schools. And I don't want to wade into that discussion, but it just kind of makes me think that, like the idea of cheating by using something like this, it's not really necessarily cheating in a traditional sense that we understand. I feel like it's a new and slightly different thing. And my thought is that if you have the language skills to be able to look at the text that the tool has generated and review it and make it more like what you would write or what your thoughts are, or correct the items that are sort of deficient, then you are creating a text or an item that really is yours, that you've got your stamp on. And so the idea of using it as an assistant, I think is great and fantastic. But I feel like it's a different sort of way of thinking about tech than we have in the past, because we do have this sort of plagiarism approach to like, oh, but you are using something that has been generated by another person. And I understand that there's like all sorts of problems with, the stuff that was fed into ChatGPT. And it's bigger questions than I think any of us is like sort of like really has the paid background to be able to answer. But like in terms of using it, I've used it in a workplace setting to be able to write an executive summary for like a service that we're providing that my supervisor passed off to the CEO and said, here's a draft, but like this will summarize what we're talking about. And it took me 20 minutes to do, and I didn't sit there and angst the entire time and stress for a whole day about writing it. So just for my own like sanity, I've used it as a tool to save myself, and just thought that I was very clear. I was like, I use ChatGPT for this, but like, here it is. So I think maybe it's a different style of thinking. So maybe it's just a comment, and maybe you have a thought, or maybe not. But that was something I've been thinking about.
I do think that there needs to be some AI. There needs to be some training in how to take what you get. I mean, we've seen so many examples in the news, whether it's a lawyer trying to use it to make their case. Please remind me of the other ones, but there seems like every other week there's somebody getting in big trouble for the Wonka thing, yeah, of people just not knowing how to use it. And then it's like reminding everyone, like, oh yeah, I mean, at what point will these stop? And we'll finally be like, yeah, there has to be this other layer on top where people understand that this is just supporting you. It's your intern, basically. It's like, it's not meant to be the final product. We need to actually develop skills to figure out how to do it. And I think in schools, I'm seeing a lot of efforts being done to learn how to, like, when you have incorporated ChatGPT as a tool, to understand how to, like, as its own skill to analyze a document that's been created by AI and figure out what's real and what's not, and how to go about doing that. And I think those are amazing skills. What an opportunity for information literacy skills training for everybody to sort of use some discernment on what's real and what's not. I mean, we've been needing that as a society for a little while here. So I'm glad to see something that might actually push us to develop that. But yeah, thank you for that. That's a really good point.
I wanted to highlight something that Andrea put in the chat of, she said, or people who aren't comfortable with their English language skills, how this tool could get them in the door, let's say with cover letter writing. So I agree with Marilyn and Henry that I see it as a creative tool, and I'm really excited about what it could do. And I know there are lots of negative examples, but I just keep thinking about the positive. Again, people getting to that next level in their business or with their career search, what it could do for them. But I want to look. I want to make sure that I'm not forgetting any other comments. In the Were there any other questions? Because I'm scrolling through a lot and I don't know if I'm missing anyone.
I'll
Also,
add to my comment that my I said that it because of an actual person that my husband works with, and she is not a native English speaker, and she has to put out a weekly email. So she writes it up and then she puts it through ChatGPT to make sure that her, use of language is more consistent with a native English speaker, or just to catch anything that she might not have caught otherwise. So I thought that that was a really interesting use. And also, I think that I'm more comfortable with it when I think of those situations where it matters, but it doesn't have to 100% be your own, like, original. Like, I don't think that I'd want to write a book 100% through AI and try to pawn it off as my own. But for a cover letter, when you need to get started and it's really your first step to, you're not really hired based on your cover letter, then you have to interview, or you have to actually have the qualifications you say that you have. So then if there's other examples that you meet those qualifications, then it's just helping in that process, which is AI driven on the other side, right? Right? Because like they go through a screening tool sometimes it's pulling out keywords from the cover letter. So it's really just to game the system a little bit more. So just my thoughts.
yeah, I mean, if you think about it, there's templates for cover letters out there already that people, of course, have been relying on to help them understand even what it is and how it's structured. So this is just an advanced version of that actually lets you personalize it a little more. I do think it's gonna, because it'll level the playing field so much and allow more and more people to use it, it'll be interesting to see how it affects whether we'll change the way we review those letters and other documents. Will we be able to now look for, if has amazing communication skills suddenly and writing and spelling, what will we look for to determine who stands out above the crowd? What will that mean? How will we change our whole approach to these things? That's just something to ponder. Will it suddenly a cover letter that's really clearly not ChatGPT created suddenly stand out? I don't know. Just something to think about. Or will it be incredibly rude to do something? Will it be, since everybody now has amazing communication, if you send a text or an email that hasn't been AI touched, will you suddenly seem like the rudest person in the world? Standards change. Any other uses for folks? Oh, I see your hand is up, Lisa. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, what I was thinking about is a lot of the concern about, the sort of negative impact that this might have down the road is really more around the distribution of wealth rather than taking jobs per se. Because I think anybody that actually spends any time working with this knows exactly what it is capable of doing and not doing, and that probably, nobody's job per se is in danger, but that, you look at Nancy Drew Mysteries, for example. Carolyn Keene never existed, as a syndicate of writers or any of those other things. And so what's the ethical difference there of putting something out? Like, any of us that have worked at a library, the authors that when you're having to shelve their books and, get them in the right order, and you're like, there's no friggin' way they wrote all these books themselves, right? And maybe they did and maybe they didn't. So you're not necessarily getting a book by so and so author. It may be somebody else did like the ghostwriting on this or whatever, but that ghostwriter probably got paid. And so I think that that's probably the biggest challenge is, how is this going to affect what's already a gross inequity in wealth distribution? Is it going to exacerbate it? Is it going to level it out? You guys must have thought about this at some point too, I'm sure.
Lisa, what you just said, it connects to what I think Emily mentioned in the chat of how is this going to grow the digital divide? And she says, if we aren't investing in all people's access and understanding of these tools. Emily, did you want to add more on that, or would anybody else like to chime in on their thoughts?
Just like I think one extra piece to that, today I've been thinking a lot about how the ACP federal program is ending. And so right, to me, that the investment piece is so important, that we have these tools, and that's great for people who understand how to use the internet and and can access the internet. But at the same time that these things are rising and we're looking at the positive impact for a portion of our, society, we're also really facing some difficulties for everybody else. And I think that really taints this whole discussion for me. Not this specific discussion, but just the idea of AI and kind of workforce in general. Yeah. That felt very disconnected, but I'm thinking a lot about the ending of the ACP, I think, in relation to this.
Yeah, that it makes me think that the sooner, it's great to do for libraries to do intro to AI classes, but I think that might just reach the people who are already have the capacity and the livelihoods or whatever to connect with it. What about getting that? That's what I love about the idea of getting doing it for the workforce folks who are the job seekers, and some of the other specific populations that we are worried about being left behind too. Getting them connected with this technology now in some direct, tangible way that shows impact on their lives, like helping them get a job, seems like a really great first step.
Natalie, you have your hand raised.
totally agree with you, Henry, and that's what we're doing. We are fortunate. We have 4 career navigators on our staff, and that's how they're using it. In the past, we always used to go to ONET, and when we had people coming into the buildings who had no idea how to write a resume, and maybe they were a steel worker or a dock worker or whatever, and they had no idea how to do that. We trained our staff to go to ONET, look up the job title, and then not exactly cut and paste, but help isolate what people's skills were that we could put in a resume. Now with the AI, we show them. I mean, we can take a job description, ask them what they did, and show that between the 2 of them. So having the people to make the connections is really key. I agree.
That's great to hear, Natalie. I'll reach out to you after. Maria and I will find out more about your program. That's exciting.
No problem. I'm going to be at PLA. So if anybody's going to PLA, come hear our presentation. It's on Thursday at 4 o'clock. So thanks.
Is there anything else that hasn't been said that that we haven't already touched upon?
We didn't talk about Genesis, the new Google version. It used to be Bard, but now it's Genesis. So that's something I think a lot of people are going to be using too. And one of the things I do like about Genesis and ChatGPT is in their introductions, they really tell people to be careful and to not ever enter any personal information into the databases. And I think that's really, really important when you're talking about the population Henry was, people that are clueless about cybersecurity, that's really important. That people need to be taught how to use this safely.
Oh, thank you for mentioning that. That's so important. And I think if Maria and I do this presentation again, we'll be sure to mention that because that's such a key piece of this.
I just want to go back to something you mentioned, Henry, and that Mark put in the chat too. He said, it reminds me a little of the early concerns about Google and Wikipedia and how acceptable they've become. And so I just can't, to me, I just wonder what in 10 years it'll be like, the discussion of what is acceptable, what is cheating, what all these questions that we brought up today, how will we think about it in just a few years? Lisa, your hand was raised.
Yeah, one of the apps I use on the regular that uses some form of generative AI text is Mindset. I may have mentioned it here before, but it's Eric Nam and his group have put it out from Dive Studios, and it's a daily check-in app for maintaining your mental health and your mental wellness. And you're asked every day just 3 questions, but one of them is, how are you feeling today? And there's the smiley face scale, and then you tell it a little bit about why you're feeling the way you are, and you immediately get a text reaction to that, that's kind of reflecting back what you're saying, but definitely, kind of building on it a little bit. It gets a little bit smarter every time. And I really like that. I always say I'd rather talk to AI that listens than a human that doesn't, you know what I mean? But also, there's been some concern in the past too about AI being put in places for mental health chatting, where somebody who's likely in crisis is reaching out. I'm sure you've heard about some of the stuff that went on at the Trevor Project, and sort of staying ahead of that too. So that if you do have somebody who's really about to self-harm or something, that they're not like getting a ChatGPT that's like, sounds like you're having a rough day, like you need a human that's going to be like, I need to be calling 911 or something like that too. It's super frustrating when, again, the people who understand it the least sometimes are the most eager to want to employ it first, and kind of muck it up a little bit and give it a bad reputation. And Sydney's got a good point in the chat too.
Yeah, that's really interesting. So we already have the digital literacy challenges generationally. I think this just highlights how much library staff can play such a key role. We were already doing so much of this stuff about cybersecurity, digital literacy skills. And we're kind of, I think, can be the we're the anti-hallucination society, right? We're the ones that are actually, our job is to make sure people know how to watch out for hallucinations. Our job is to help, I think, question the people who are creating these systems and their motives, and ensure that things are open to help people. It's kind of like what we do. Lots of great comments coming in. Yeah, anti-hallucination.
I wanted to highlight something that a question that Andrea put in the chat. She said, "Have you encountered curriculum that libraries can take and adapt for teaching generative AI in workforce development?" So, I know Brooklyn Public Library, I highly recommend the blueprint that they already have, if you could reach out to them and get your hands on it. But for those of us who are here who have experience with ChatGPT, do you have a blueprint that you might be able to share with us, if you could put your contact information in the chat so we could reach out to you and get our hands on that valuable information, so it could be replicated in other libraries around the country.
Is jobscan.co what you use, Natalie?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
And is that kind of like a tool that your digital navigators connect with people? Okay.
We do. What jepscon.co does is it can take, if you have a resume and you have a job description, an actual job description in the company's website, you can scan it into their system and they will immediately tell you what ATS system the company is using, and they'll make suggestions. They show you how close of a match rate you are, and then it gives suggestions on changes that you can make in your resume to show that you're a better fit. And they're really good. They never lie on a resume. They never encourage that. But what they do is they come up with synonyms for people who might not normally get those. Then they give suggestions on how to use words in a sentence, like skills that people might not use. So it's really easy. And then they can help you write cover letters, same kind of thing. So they've just done that. They just upgraded and added ChatGPT into that model. We've been using jobscan.co for a long time now. So the bad thing is they doubled their price. But if you have a chance to talk with one of their reps, I encourage you to do it.
Very cool. Yeah, thank you. We're looking, I still think there's a lot we don't know. So this is one of the reasons why we wanted to do this talk, was to see what else, other things that are happening. It's not always easy to find out what's happening nationally. And there's so many, how many libraries are offering AI courses right now? I don't know if anyone's collecting that information, How many are working with patrons on workforce development? All right, well, we're coming up to the last few minutes. Are there any other last minute questions or comments before we wrap it up?
I loved hearing from Lisa, Natalie, Emily, everybody in the chat. It was just the more we were excited to do this because we got a chance to learn from you too. So we just want to thank you for giving us your time this afternoon to talk about this topic, and just many thanks to you all.
Definitely gives me a lot to think about. And yeah, thanks everybody.
Yeah, thank you, Maria and Henry. This has been great. Thank you, everyone, for being so interactive and chatty. And I learned so much too. Thanks for everything, all the links in the chat. So to that end, I will be sharing out the links from the chat. So stay tuned to that in a follow-up email. Also, our next meeting will be April 9th. Libraries Build Business Communications Toolkit. And we will have Megan Janicki from ALA and Audrey Barbakoff from CoLab Capacity, who will be sharing that. So same link, same time, 2 o'clock Eastern time, whatever it is, your local time zone, the second Tuesday of the month. So with that, stay tuned for the follow-up email with the link. Thank you so much for being here. And thank you again to our presenters. Have a great rest of your week.
Thanks,
Have a great
Sandra.
week, everyone.
Bye.